Hello and welcome to Default Assault, where we take on everything. And I mean everything. By default, I'm your host, Demosthenes, and with me, as always, is Mr. Kyle Nash. How's it going, Kyle?
Thanks, Demosthenes. And well, after reviewing Major League, apparently he's going to not listen to Kyle's warning to watch out for Major League 2. Apparently, Demos is thinking, I don't know what the hell he's thinking. Yeah.
I don't either. We spoke about Major League 2 quite a bit in our last episode, and I felt the best way we had to do it justice by watching the film. I had never seen it before. I had no idea what I was in for. It was different than what I expected. I will say that. So tonight we'll be delving into Major League 2, somehow asking the question if it's required viewing. But for starters, you had seen Major League 2 before. What were your impressions? I know you love the first one. You and I argued for an hour about the fact that whether or not the first one is required viewing or not. You called it required viewing. So Definitely. Coming from that mindset and going into Major League 2, what were your impressions?
Well, so first of all, and I believe I saw it with my family in the theater. Like House Nash is all about Major League. A great movie, all the way around. Required viewing, like Demos says, all that other stuff. So, but we went to the theater to see 2. Now, I don't think anybody really knew what to expect. A number of years had passed between the 2 movies, obviously, because that's how these things work. So what I think the movie does a good job of is, linking the 2 together. But for my initial impression, when I walked out of the theater, I'm just like, this is not the same movie. The magic was somehow missing. And though at the time it was tougher for me to put my finger on it, I mean, this movie came out in the early 90s, so I ain't that old, it's something to where I had a lot of trouble figuring out what was missing, but I felt like something was.
Well, I felt like the first film, the immediate difference I noticed between the 2 was I felt like the first one had a little bit more respect for the sport. I was pleasantly surprised that the first one wasn't quite what I expected. When you hear the term sports comedy, the first one wasn't quite what I expected. This movie is what I was expecting when I watched the first one. Far more slapsticky, far more out there in terms of comedy. And there's some good stuff in here. There's some stuff that is genuinely funny. But I really felt watching Major League 2 immediately after the first one, it in many ways it compounded on the biggest issues I had with the first film.
Yeah, exactly.
The romantic subplot makes the first film's romantic subplot look like terms of endearment. The entire back and forth lasted probably a good 15 more minutes than it should have. There was a nice ending point, and then it just kept going. And although I think the film started off decently strong. You brought characters to a different place. There were different obstacles and different objectives. All right. I'm good. I'm on board. Let's see how they evolve. Like many sports figures, how they evolve once achieving fame. Great premise.
Well, there's even more to it than that. And actually, you mentioned the respect for the sport. No. Here's what I think you're missing. And this is just because you're not a sports guy. This movie starts out great. And one of the things that it captures so well is this very same thing that you're referring to as less respect for the sport. No, Demos. It continues to accurately portray your typical maniac sports fan. Keep in mind, folks, sports fan is short for fanatic. And they indeed capture the fanatic nature of fans like this. A team that's supposed to suck but you're stuck following simply because you were a kid, or because you live in the city and this is who you got and all whatever. There's a number of reasons for dying the wolf fanhood, especially in the city of Cleveland. I don't care if the Browns have finally won a game thanks to Baker Mayfield or not in the NFL, but I digress. The punchline is that first movie captured the desperate fan and them getting the Christmas gift of a contending team in that sport, period. And you can imagine that after being lifted so high, they were ousted, basically just put to terms right out the door by the White Sox. Sure, they won the pennant, but didn't make it out of the ALCS, which is basically the MLB semifinals, for those who don't know.
The White Sox had a really bad year in 1994. They not only lost to Major League 2, but they also lost to the Angels in the outfield. I mean, goddamn. Now there's a baseball curse for you.
What they also show in the second movie, which is absolutely true, is a dangerous thing in fanhood, actually. It's called raised expectations. Oh, well, my team pulled a performance out of their ass. Of course, they're winning it all next year. And that's exactly the attitude they have. And then as the intro continues, they obtain Jack Parkman from Oakland, and now it adds some legitimacy. And you can see in the fans are going precisely apeshit, just like fans who have suddenly become spoiled do. And the quest of the spoiled fan is something I haven't seen portrayed anywhere else, let alone as accurately as you got from Randy Quaid. Go ahead, Demo.
Well, I'm glad that you brought it up. The one thing that felt stable and consistent and true to life in that first film was the depiction of the fans. And there were moments in the first film where you did see the more fanatic side of these fans, and it worked. With this one, it felt exaggerated to the point where I think it diluted some of the genuine nature behind that. I get it. Randy Quaid, I've seen people like that, but the dialogue between the fans, the discussions behind the scenes, it just didn't feel as natural as it was in the first film.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. And you probably got people who are trying to play a ridiculous fan that actually aren't. And that part could be true, but I'm glad you corrected yourself by saying, oh, no, I know there are fans like this. Yes, Dima, you say not true to life. No. I think, sadly, this is far truer to life than you think. They actually came up with the sports fan troll long before social media and Twitter and all that was a thing. The only difference is here now, the heckler is something that exists in real life and isn't pelting Ricky Wilding's Vaughn social media accounts with his vitriol.
And they dress up like avatars, so it works out very well.
Bingo.
But I wanted to focus on the word exaggerate as well, because I felt like a lot of the things in this film felt far more exaggerated than they were in the first film, including Harry Doyle. The comedy and the situations that were portrayed in the first film came from a more realistic place. And I think that's what made it far more effective than this film.
I'm with you on that precisely. Like, let the comparison I make involving using alcohol as part of your scene, I'm going to go to my man's favorite place. North by Northwest is set up by Cary Grant's character being basically incapacitated. And the way that happens is they force feed him a fifth of, I think it's rum or alcohol of some sort. Bourbon, thank you. The way they do that is they just start pouring the bourbon into a glass, and then they cut away to him in a car. Earlier in the movie, and he says something about how things are starting to spiral negative, and he whips the bottle out and pours a drink. And that's where it should have stopped. This stuff where he's in there with his wife beater, honey, take over. No, that was too far. However, I want to stress this beyond that part. Harry Doyle is still a fantastic element of this movie. And
some of the witticisms were the best from him.
You know, exactly. And of course, my favorite part, granted, this could never happen in real life because of the FCC, but there's one part, the Indians are playing an important game. Vaughn's pitching, and there's a wind up and the pitch. Smack. Batter gets a hold of it. Right. So there's the scene set. Wind up and the pitch. Smack. Oh, shit. Now, that made me laugh out loud again this time, and I know it's coming.
Well, you know what? I mean, there was one aspect which I found amusing, because it was it was exaggerated in the way it was portrayed in this film and possibly at the time, but it's become a staple nowadays. All the walls surrounding the field being covered in terrible advertisements. I don't know if you saw that much of it back in the day, but nowadays that's the way that most sports stadiums I see are. Except they've gone digital, so they're flashing at the same time.
Well, that's usually true for minor league stadiums. Yeah. And if anyone's looking for a good proctologist, you may want to look by the 375-foot sign. Yeah, no, that's
those
funny.
Jokes retroactively became much more steeped in realism.
It is what it is, man. And you know, I'm glad we're on Doyle really quick, because something else I want to get in there real quick is they use that character to show how much the franchise was raised up by the previous team's performance, right? When they cut to him last in the first time doing TP Talk, in one of the segments and transitions throughout the movie, he's in like a little thing with a mic in front of him and a tape deck, and it's just a pretty small setup. They open the movie with him giving his little rundown of the previous season, previewing the upcoming season that would be the movie, which was done very well, by the way. And he's in a full-blown friggin' studio. Holy shit, people care about the Indians now. This is true to life.
Well, the beginning with him reintroducing their characters and what they are, I thought was an effective way to do it, and also an effective way to get around the fact that they recast.
There you go. I knew
Wesley Snipes.
I knew you'd notice that. That was very well done.
With Omar Epps, what did you think of his performance? If there's one thing that I universally hear as far as negative comments regarding this film is the fact that they recast it. This one element many people have cited as the thing that destroys the movie. I wouldn't go that far.
So Omar Epps' delivery is different. I think they picked Omar Epps because he looks good wearing the flashy stuff.
The physicality was pretty on point, I think.
Right. He looked good wearing the flashy stuff. He seemed comfortable with the one scene where he's like, wow, money's really gone to his head. Let's take a ride in my limo. That, you know, so he seemed to have to pop in those situations, but I couldn't buy him as Willie Mays Hayes anywhere else. He wasn't as good as Wesley Snipes. Now, you would think somebody who starred in the movie The Program could do a better job of being serious in movies, but I didn't really think that landed here. You know, here you use the word genuine, and I'd hate to piggyback it, but Omar Epps felt less genuine.
His character felt like the tone of the rest of the film far more exaggerated. Now, it did lead to some funny scenes. I thought that the action movie trailer with Jesse Ventura, where he keeps cutting to the lame stunts, was hilarious. But once again, that scene is really funny, but it's also one of the scenes where I'm more aware that's not Wesley Snipes.
Oh, that's a great point by you. And let me ask you this. We mentioned this in production meeting as well. I can tell you the precise moment that the movie goes straight to hell. You said you thought you did too. I'm going to have you go first because I'm asking the question.
For me, one of the
movie went to hell.
I think for me, one of the more interesting aspects of this movie was, like I said, how the characters evolve. And I bought into, Dorn now owns the team. Yep. And he's going to go through this film struggling along with the team to find a footing and find a good path. I was on board with this. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. We've seen some of the characters evolve. We saw Jake Taylor become a coach. We see Charlie Sheen, how he wants to go, the Wild Thing has become straight and narrow. And then they try to replicate the first film. They have Lou Dobbs have a heart attack and disappear, and they bring in the bitch Rachel again, and suddenly we're seeing the exact same shit from the first movie. That's the moment where it went to hell for me. I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, that was the most distinctive moment where I think everything took a different turn.
The moment where I lost the movie was the fight. That's where I'm like, all right, this is f***ing dumb. By then they had over exaggerated the Harry Doyle drinking thing, and Randy Quaid's in full pissed off fan troll mode who didn't get what he was supposed to get. Willie Mays Hayes is doing his thing. Root Baker just got hurt, which, to be honest, I would argue he's a weaker character than Omar Epps trying to play Wesley Snipes, but I digress.
I agree.
Rube Baker's a good idea. He just wasn't done right. And I don't blame the actor in this case either. And he himself is a symbol of what baseball used to be to people.
He's the Woody from Cheers in Major League.
Maybe Rube Baker's supposed to be what happens when you have one of those guys from that previous era try to come up in this league. And I did like the quirk that he had with being unable to throw the ball back to the pitcher and how Taylor worked him through that. That was a good device.
That felt more like the first film.
It really did.
Yeah.
Good point by you. It almost feels like they changed writers or didn't have enough material.
It's the same team. The same director at the very least.
Okay, so they didn't change any of that. So then it's the later thing I was theorizing, which is, they didn't have enough time, so they were trying to fit stuff in.
Or maybe in a similar fashion, the success of Major League got to their heads too.
I mean, like, seriously.
It writes itself, literally.
I mean, I was actually going to complete this, but you got it there, so I'm glad you picked up on it. I was going to complete this by saying Major League 2's performance is so perfect and true to what it's trying to portray that it itself suffered the same way as the sports franchise with too many high expectations put on it before a season starts. Well, it's that spot on.
Even the editing. Now, I mentioned in my first episode, I'll come clean and say I'm not a big fan of sports genre movies. It's probably at the bottom of my list. I'm not saying that I hate them all or anything. I'm just saying it's not my cup of tea, which leads me to a couple of questions I'm going to have in a moment. But I think one of the things I liked about the first film was when they actually were playing the sport, it was very well edited and engaging. In this film, I think that even the editing and the cinematography it didn't match up. I ended up getting bored during some of the sports scenes. Which is the worst thing that can possibly happen in a sports movie. It's like going to see a James Bond film and getting bored by the action scenes.
I mentioned Rube Baker being weaker than Omar Epps as Willie Mays Hayes. Izuru Tanaka is the worst character in this movie, and it's not close.
Oh, yeah.
There's a historical catch that the real Willie Mays made in The Green Monster. If you hit a ball out there, you weren't chasing it down, you weren't catching it in that center field area. But there was one time when Willie Mays, in a sprint, with his back to the plate, kind of makes an over-the-shoulder catch. More in line with something you'd see as a maneuver done in football with a receiver catching a long ball. But he makes this catch, and it's immortalized in a picture. His back, Hayes, and his number, his arms out in front of him, making the catch over his shoulder. They try to simulate that, and it's a great job. You could see that they pulled that out. It was a great shout out to actual baseball fans. But you did that after you got all this Tanaka bullshit. How seriously can you take it?
I had no idea that was supposed to be embodied like this famous moment, because it didn't seem that way in the film at all.
How could it?
Well, real quick, before we get to our wrap up, there is one last character I want to talk about, and it was Jake Taylor, because he was the true down to earth baseball player that basically anchored the plot in reality to allow for a lot of the more comedic hijinks in the first film to develop naturally. In this film, I was actually surprised when he would show up. I thought that his initial arc of going from a player to becoming a coach was an interesting setup. I didn't feel like it went anywhere, really truly developed its potential.
Well, and no, you're right. And this leads me back to, I think somewhere the team that was writing this had their direction changed somewhere. Because
Charlie Sheen. They wanted to focus on Charlie Sheen.
Right. And let's be clear. Your true protagonist, the lens through which Major League is consumed, is Jake Taylor. There's no question. And Tom Berenger being the actor with the biggest resume at the time, it made sense. Then, some studio exec goes, we really want to follow this Sheen kid. He's totally winning, right? See what I did there? So while I think they may have originally written it for Taylor to go on this quest to become a coach and have to deal with these expectations that are thrust upon him, just like, all that. But the direction got altered, So the punchline is, you say all that, I still have to comment, the best scene by Lou Brown in either of these movies is when they first tell Taylor that they want him to be a coach. And he's like, I'm a ball player. I want to look for somebody with his gut hanging over his waist and pastrami coming out of his mouth. And then I think it like a scene, maybe 2 scenes later, it cuts to Lou Brown's apartment or something, knocks on the door, and you see, oh, hey, Jake. And he takes that side, very well delivered by Tom Berenger, by the way. Like he's about to give the speech, and then Lou goes, "Oh, I'll tell Dorn I begged you to come back."
Well, yeah, because that was indicative of the mentality of the first film.
Yeah,
in every way, shape, or form. That felt more authentic to the series.
And I think that's the single best Lou Brown scene you get. I mean, I referenced it in the last episode that some of Lou Brown's best moments are in this movie, and that is indeed one of them.
Okay, I was wondering because I felt like he went downhill. I think that towards the end, him watching BBC saying how much he loves that shit, I thought that was funny. It kind of redeemed some of the things they did with his character, I think. But so overall, I mean, I as you could probably surmise, I wasn't a big fan of the film. Is it required viewing? I wouldn't even say it's recommended, honestly. If you like the first film, you're done. I don't know what the reception has been for Back to the Minors, but I have no intention of going back anywhere near this thing for a while.
I mean, listen, Back to the Minors is fun for what it is. It's better than Major League 2 in my opinion.
Okay.
It actually could have been good, but the budget's so low on it. Like, you know, they got actors that are playing out of position, right? Your pardon expression. But the characters they have in there, it's definitely more of your more cliched sports movie where you got some stuff like that. They try to bring back characters from the previous major league. So of course they picked the most popular ones, Serrano and Tanaka.
Are you serious?
They bring Tanaka back again. But you know what? Tanaka's better in the third one than the second one. They realized that they were being borderline racist, you know, with Tanaka, I guess. And they bring back Rube. Again, Rube Baker, far more likable in the third movie. And while they don't have Berenger as Jake Taylor, Scott Bakula as Gus Cantrell, pretty solid move there. And they have
that's the only reason I even considered watching it. Scott Bakula.
Yeah, exactly. Scott Bakula is what drew me in. And obviously it's not a great movie, but it's better than you think it is.
He seems like he would be. I mean, I can picture him as a baseball player. So yeah, we stay away from Major League 2. That's all I'm gonna say. So people are gonna look at our list of films that we've done for required viewing and be like, "Oh, Northwest, Casablanca, Vertigo, Gone with the Wind, Major League 2."
You know, hold on. Let's keep this with a baseball analogy, though, right? The home run record of 61 by Roger Maris had an asterisk over it. We need to put asterisk over Major League 2 because the asterisk needs to point out the fact that you were warned.
I guess I have a masochistic streak I was not aware of. So, of course, what did you guys think of Major League 2? Do you have any other recommendations for required viewing? Something better, hopefully. Let us know in the comments below. And, of course, you can find me on hilaritybydefault.com where we have fun stuff every week, on Twitter at Default Hilarity, and on Facebook and Instagram, Hilarity by Default. Kyle, where can we find you on and off the season?
Okay, you can find me on Twitter as the SOTG and on Instagram as the same, the SOTG. Of course, you can find me on Facebook as the student of the game. See writings of the UCF Knights in their football season currently going on on sportsmediapass.com, which is part of Blue HQ Media. And then check out my writings for the Miami Dolphins on the Dolphins Wire of USA Today. And then Tokyo Jameson's back in the fold for dinner time, so check that out on Tuesday nights. And if you miss it on Tuesday night, you can check out the podcast itself on Blue HQ Media on either Break the Fourth or Sports Media Pass. And yeah, good times all the way around, man.
Fantastic. Make sure to check us out every week where life is hilarious by default, unlike the movie.
Burn.